that was only in certain circumstances could you put that into your equation. And so I think by taking that off the table, really says that these are what we establish as our tree canopy percentages. There is a procedure through a landscape modification that recognizes that not all sites are created equal, and that we need to have some flexibility to accommodate different sites. But that's the percentages that we want to achieve. That's the standard we're trying to achieve. So that's in totality 5 amendments that again are trying to recognize some of the issues that you heard, that we heard, to provide some means for resolution. Certainly we're open to any changes that you may wish to make on these amendment sheets. You could simply move them individually or move them as you see fit to amend, or certainly move other amendments if you so choose. This is your process.
So David, on Amendment 5 in the paragraph up there was underlined, the tree canopy coverage requirements listed in yada. It's got a table, parenthetical 3.
Mm-hmm.
We have a parenthetical 2 table.
Thank you for the
And
catch.
a parenthetical 4 table.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 2. Thank you for the catch of the typo. I was working
It wasn't
on
the
this
catch the
yesterday.
typo, I thought it was
What's he
supposed to be
talking
seen something.
Yeah, no, it is supposed to be 2.
So why don't we have a table 2 and a table 4 without a table 3? We won't go there.
No, we won't go there. Table 4 is actually, it's the way that the code gets constructed.
And there's also a typo that attain the required, the U missing and required.
Oh,
We have to read it. So, this is for, I want to ask a question again. Can the chair ask a question? Is that okay, Gordon? Okay, good. I just want to make, so, I think I had a misperception maybe last time. So, on table parenthetical 2, there are subdivisions for single-family residential, 10 or more lots. The tree canopy coverage, and it's 30%.
Yep.
And if you have like a large wetland on there, or an area that can't be built on, or a PRD, that type of thing, all those trees in the non-buildable area can contribute to the 30%, correct?
that is correct.
It doesn't have to be 30% of the lots that are cleared off to build houses.
Correct, it's 30% of your overall starting for your site. Yep.
Okay, that paints a completely different
Yep.
picture for me than I.
Yeah, we're not talking about 30% on each individual lot, we're talking about 30%.
I think we had some graphics that had like 30% on it, by the time you build a house and you try to put 30% of it, it's physically impossible just about. And if the development had a public park area in it, that's all part of the gross area.
That's all part of the gross area. So what you saw then going back, that's a nice, going back then to it, that's in Amendment 1, that's what we laid out there on Amendment Sheet 1, where we say, here's what's considered tree canopy, the 6 feet and over, and then here's the where, here are the where. And it's a may, because not every site has critical areas, not every site may require perimeter landscaping, so they may, and we had previously talked about, there's language in the proposed amendments that encourage trees to be planted in those areas on the site where they're more likely to be maintained for the duration, and that's in street trees, that's in perimeter landscaping, that's in open space, that's in critical areas. Those are areas where, typically people are not supposed to go in and cut, because if they do, then they are probably going to get more than a slap on the wrist, most likely first by a homeowners association, and maybe ultimately by our code enforcement folks if somebody decides to turn them in for what they perceive as a violation.
Just as long as we were making some trivial corrections, your table on the last page, when I first read it, I never noticed that for canopy area equals CA for canopy area equals PR squared. Is it pressure?
No, it's pi. Pi.
Okay, do that.
Yes, sorry.
Oh.
I don't know why that, and it got changed over in the other column too. No, thank you, Microsoft.
I was gonna say, that's, Microsoft did that too. Yes, Merle?
Last time, at the last meeting, I had asked if staff or anybody had done, because I'd asked Amy earlier, if anybody had actually done an analysis of which ordinance would create, in the end, the best or the biggest tree canopy. I just heard Simon say that he doesn't believe that the new ordinance will create a larger canopy than the existing ordinance. So I guess my first question is, have you done any of this work? And then I guess a couple clarifications, because I'm trying to figure out Simon's math on this, is the existing ordinance protects existing trees. And it doesn't require lots or sites that have no trees to create a canopy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the only thing you can do is take the existing canopy and reduce it. That's all that's happening. You're not, no one's adding more canopy except in the place of street trees or some landscape requirements.
That, you're talking under today's rule, under
Under
the current,
today's rules.
under the current, yeah, that's, yeah, it's, under today's rules, we would measure canopy, well, we don't, because we look at it as a replacement. It's retain significant trees or cut them down and replace them. And that only applies to sites that have significant trees.
Right. It doesn't apply to the sites without trees.
Or the sites that don't have, or a site that's completely of alder. You could have a site that's entirely alder under today's rules, and those trees would come down, because they're not considered a significant tree, and they would not need to be replaced.
Because so I have and I don't know how, Simon came to his conclusions, but, because mine came to the opposite, because I figured if you were creating more canopy, that the new ordinance would create more canopy in the future than the existing ordinance. Did the staff ever measure or come to some estimates?
No, we have not, and this is certainly, we're well aware of this question that was posed by the commission at the public hearing. And it really, there are a lot of factors which go into sort of determining canopy and looking prospectively. One of which is kind of the time. Are we looking out? What's the time point in the future that we're shooting for? We're proposing that we change this to 20 years. So then do we say, let's go out and look at 20 years? There's factors such as what are our assumed densities? What are the assumptions of the planting mix? Differing rates of growth of trees just within Snohomish County. So I think in order to do justice to this, you really need to sit down and work through what are the series of assumptions that you would make going into this, and then perform the analysis. And so, there's a time element of that we didn't have between your public hearing and today. And certainly, you're seeing me here and not Amy. I report that Amy is still helping out with her community up at Darrington and continues to do that. And so, and I'm not trying to make excuses in terms of limited resources, but I think there are just a number of factors to do that. I think it's also not necessarily a fair comparison to look at the previous code. I think there seems to be, at least, and maybe I'm naive at this, but what I was kind of hearing in the testimony and what I've heard in some of the stakeholders meetings is I think there's a general opinion that the current regulations aren't doing a very good job, that there seems to be an opinion that they have a lot of flaws to them. And so I would certainly question the validity of looking at a regulation where there seems to be a prevailing opinion that it's not workable, and that we need to look at something different in moving forward.
Thank you. So, something, Simon?
I don't know if I should talk. I just want to say I'm very deferential to Merle's expertise. I know he has quite a bit, and I don't know where the point how to speak about arguments or not. I just from where I'm coming from, I feel like the code as it is right now has some level of guarantee that important trees will be preserved and or replanted with other trees. Trees will someday become important trees. The ordinance as proposed, and I think that staff has done a lot of good work here today. I don't agree with all of these proposed amendments, but I think they make the bill much stronger. But particularly prior to these amendments, the implementation, while theoretically may be a good result, or I just didn't, in my opinion, I saw so many what I thought were holes. If you have a ground level rain garden, that's a tree. Well, it's not a tree. If you have, a bush, that's a tree. And for me, that's not a tree. And there was literally a half dozen of situations like that. I didn't feel reasonably assured that, 20 years from now, we're going to have more trees, much less anything close to what we currently have.
Good. So, we have a round robin, which I think I'd like to do, because I think there's probably opinions all around this.